Okay. Hold on get as I get this positioned here. Okay. Today I wanted to just be skeptical of evolution. And it's interesting how when somebody sees a life form, a living organism, why all of a sudden jump to saying that it's a natural cause? I mean, why is there the bias to insist on a natural cause? I mean, what is a natural cause? A natural cause is from existing energy that's already in motion, you might say. It's going from order to disorder. And how can you get energy that's ordered when it can't order itself? I mean, this immediate need for a natural cause is totally unscientific. It's totally uncalled for. It's totally out of hand. And I just want to go through a few points on evolution and being skeptical of it, of course, because you see a directed working mechanism and you automatically assume, oh, it's a natural cause. Why the need to jump to a natural cause? When you want to explain something, you go the simplest route possible, not the most complicated route. I mean, to explain a natural cause for a natural cause, I mean, when it's a directed working mechanism, for crying out loud. You can't use direction as evidence of no direction. So your immediate thought should be, oh, it's directed. Yeah. Okay. So then you want to find out, well, how did it get directed? And the immediate jump to physical things as an explanation for directed working mechanisms is totally unscientific and unsupported. There's no basis whatsoever to jump to a natural cause for directed working things. It's just totally, biased. It's almost like you have a devil that insists on a natural cause. Oh, it's got to be a natural cause. Why? It's directed. Directed things have a director, have a maker. But anyways, it's really kind of annoying especially when you try and insist that evolution is scientific. No part of it is scientific. It has no basis in fact or science or anything. It's all speculation, conjecture. It's jumping to a conclusion before you even consider what the evidence is. You already jumped to the conclusion and without even looking or considering the evidence. Because the evidence is a directed working mechanism. And you're automatically jumping to the conclusion that it jumped into directed working order by a natural cause. That's totally biased and baseless. No matter how you try to justify it or explain it by a natural cause, it's just totally without any scientific support whatsoever. You say it's scientific, you say there's evidence, well, show the evidence. Don't just jump to the conclusion of a natural cause because it has to be a natural cause, because then if it's not a natural cause, then what? You're not even thinking straight. You're not even being logical, rational, reasonable. But anyways, before I get going too much, let me try to get into what I was intending on discussing. And I'm going to be discussing the objections to evolution, or the reason why you should be skeptical. Of course, I live in a world that is skeptical of doing the right thing or saying the right thing or being right. They think that being wrong or going their own way or doing their own thing is more intelligent than being logical, rational, reasonable, or learning from what everybody else has learned from. But anyway, we get to the objections of thing. Let me do a share screen here. Okay. Got a share screen. I guess that's okay. Might as well just do this, right? Not going to be that much different. Anyway. So let's go to the Wikipedia, which is the most biased, position, baseless, biased, unscientific, irrational, illogical approach there is. But I just wanted to make sure that I get a good outline of what the objections to evolution are. And if you see any more objections that aren't listed here, then we could talk about that too. But anyways, hold on just a second. Let me just double check here. I gotta go back. Hold on. I have to leave it here so I can see. Okay, I'm good. So, no, this is so biased. It says objections to evolution. Then it goes through how evolution is all accepted by science. Look what it goes through. It goes through the history of evolution, defining evolution, saying what evolution is, acceptance, scientific acceptance of evolution and the status of the theory, the degree of acceptance, and then, before it even goes into, what the problems are with evolution. So we'll just skip all that. And let's go to the, scientific status. I don't even know what that's about. A common objection to evolution is that evolution does not adhere to normal scientific standards. Yeah. Of course, that's what we've been saying. It's not genuinely scientific. Of course, it's not scientific. It's argued that evolutionary biology does not follow the scientific method. Of course not. And therefore should not be taught in the science classes. Yeah. Or at least should be taught alongside with other views, i.e. creationism. Creationism, why don't you say evolutionism? You're already biased. These objections often deal with the very nature of the evolutionary theory. The very nature. What nature? It doesn't exist. The scientific method and the philosophy of science. There is no scientific method or regarding evolution. Anyway, the religious nature. Creationists commonly argue that evolution is a religion. It is not a science. Yeah. And the purpose of this criticism is to reframe. To reframe the debate? No, that's what it is. It is what it is. It's not science. It's a belief without evidence. Reframe the debate from one between science, evolutionary, and religion, creation. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with religion. Creationism is not an ism. Evolution is an ism. That's the belief. That's not scientific. The truth is not a religion, is the truth. So it's not an ism, it's a fact. And it's not a religious belief. It's not two religious beliefs. One is factual belief, the other one is a ism, and it's evolutionism. Or even to argue that evolution is religious while intelligent design. Who's talking about intelligent design? Those that propose evolution frequently refer to supporters of evolution as evolutionists or Darwinists. Yeah, you believe something. You're following something. You're adhering to something. And it's not the truth. The arguments for evolution being a religion generally amount to arguments by analogy. It's argued that evolution and religion have one or more things in common, that therefore evolution is a religion. It's going into a bunch of nonsense here. Evolution is a belief. Creation is a fact. It's a fact of history. And the flood is a fact. Only I can't talk about geology right now because I'm going to have a debate in geology. So I'm going to try to stick to biology for the time being. Supporters of evolution have argued in response that no scientist's claim are treated as sacrosanct. So we gotta go sacrosanct. Make sure we get the definition here. Sacrosanct.
Sacrosanct.
Yeah, okay, especially its principle or place or routine regarding as too important or valuable to be interfered with. Too important or valuable to be interfered with. Okay. No scientist claims are sacrosanct. Okay. I think I can understand the root word of that. As shown by aspects that Darwin's theory have been rejected or revised by scientists over the years to form new claim that evolution relies on faith is likewise rejected on grounds that evolution has strong supporting evidence. No, it doesn't, and therefore does not require what? Evolution is all faith and no basis, no grounds for support. The argument that evolution is religious has been rejected. Dogmatic zealots, its adherence by spiritual. Yeah, evolutionism is adhered to by dogmatic zealots and its adherents. Like I was saying when I started out, why jump to the idea of an object credit giving cause when objects can't account for themselves or anything else? Everything only is what it's made to be and only ever does what it's directed or made to do. Why the jump to a natural cause when naturalism can't even explain itself? And then they say, well, what about God? God is the infinite possibility because everything reverts or regresses back to an infinite potential. If you didn't notice, assuming for the purpose of the argument, however, that evolution is a religious tenet, remedy stop teaching of evolution, not established. It's clearly established in case of law, perhaps also common sense, that evolution is not a religion, and that teaching evolution does not violate establishment cause. Evolution is still a belief. It's a religion. It's a baseless belief. Besides, I don't care what anybody determines. It's a baseless belief, has no evidence. It's baseless object credit giving belief with no scientific, rational reasoning whatsoever. Okay. A claim related that evolution is atheistic. Atheism. Atheism is religion. All science, methodological, faith-based, supernatural, theistic belief. Here we go. Yeah, evolution is supernatural. It's a supernatural, magical belief. Regardless, either way, it's not a physical cause because it doesn't matter what you believe. If you believe in God or not, you have to go to a supernatural cause, a magical supernatural cause. That's the whole point. Evolution is magic because there's no scientific basis whatsoever for any part of it. And this idea that you work off of a living organism that's already there, assuming that it's already there, that there is evolution. If it couldn't make itself exist, it can't make itself to be anything else. It's got the same problem of written instruction that's not there. But anyways, okay, let's go look at these things again. Unfalsifiability. Maybe we can get some perspective here if we go back up here. Hold on. So, religious in nature, unfalsifiability, tautological nature, lack of observation, unreliable evidence, unreliable chronology, improbable, unexplained aspects of the natural world, complex structures, Cambrian explosion, complexity argument, creation of information, violation of second law of thermodynamics, humans as animals, social effects, and atheism. These are all problems with evolution. So now maybe we can go back and look at this, unfalsifiability. Statement is considered falsifiable if there's an observation or test that could be made that would demonstrate that the statement is false. Statements are not falsifiable, cannot be examined by scientific investigation since they permit no tests that evaluate their accuracy. Creationists such as Henry Moore's claim any observation can be fitted into the evolutionary framework, so it's impossible to demonstrate any observation. Nothing is observed. What are you talking about? It's wrong, therefore evolution is non-scientific. Or any observation of what we see. So, in a sense, what he's saying, you're looking at the world around you, and all you see is evolution. All you see is that it's the result of the magic of evolution. That's the assumption. You have to assume that there's some kind of magic that makes everything what it is and not any God. So since it's magic, it's just a thing that happens to happen, even though no one ever saw it happen. No one ever sees it happen. Okay. Which is another thing. The fact that living organisms are versatile, the fact that they are able to adapt to the environment, they adapt to the environment and even respond to the environment, that's the indication of design. That's the indication of intent. Why jump to a natural cause when nature doesn't care for anything? Nature doesn't do anything. Rocks don't want to do anything. And when I say rocks, it's metals, elements, everything. They don't want to do anything. They don't have an intent or purpose or reason to do anything. And of course, they never do anything with intent or purpose. So, how did we end up with intent and purpose if the supposed cause has no intent or purpose? Just makes no sense whatsoever. The fact that there is intent and purpose, wisdom and understanding, you know, is proof that we were made with all those things. We're made with intent, purpose, wisdom, and understanding. Because physical things don't have that. And when you see an organism that can adapt, such as bacteria, such as all the animals that fit in their niche, find a niche and fit into it and adapt to it, and have a genetic drift so that they almost fit perfectly in that niche and hardly anywhere else, such as polar bears, such as snow leopards, such as a whole range of different animals. They fit into a niche and they can hardly fit into anything else, such as cheetahs. And that's evidence of intent and purpose. I mean, that's why the need to jump to a natural cause. That's what I don't get. How can a person believe so much in a natural cause for all the purpose and intent and um, response, to the environment, adaptation to the environment? All these things are with intent and purpose. And why the jump to a natural cause which has no intent or purpose? There is no purpose or intent in life without without having it. And the only way to have it is with considering everything, infinite potential. If you don't have everything, you have nothing. And we have everything, in this world, you know, at least for us to know about. Whether or not we have everything or not, we do have access of knowing about everything that is, even if we don't have it. So we can know that there is infinite potential, even if we don't have it, because all the evidence is showing infinite potential. And of course, that's not by accident. You can't you can't have infinite power from less and less power. You have to start out with infinite power. You can't have infinite understanding from less and less understanding or knowledge. You have to start out with knowing everything. You can't start out with knowing nothing, because if you know nothing, you're never going to be able to know anything. And if you have knowledge, it comes from a greater knowledge. If you know of something, it means you were given the capacity to know it by something greater than yourself. And no physical thing has that capacity. Even the elements and molecules inside of us don't have that capacity. We have that capacity because of the way that we are made. But the elements themselves don't have that capacity. They don't have a mind. They don't have a brain. They aren't able to think logically. Everything is word salad to them. Means nothing. So people with a mind can understand things that require a mind. And the things that don't have a mind obviously can't understand it. So physical things don't have understanding. Anyways, I'm going down a rabbit trail, it looks like. Okay, so supporters of evolution argue that evolution could be falsified by many conceivable lines of evidence, such as fossil records showing no change over time. Of course, I'm going to be discussing that in my upcoming debate, which will be Sunday scheduled. We agreed to Sunday at 2 o'clock if they can remember to do that. James and Candor Man, if they do that, then there'll be a debate on Sunday, 2 o'clock, 2 in the afternoon, of course, Eastern Standard Time. And I'll be discussing whether or not geology is more or better explained by the global flood than by whatever natural means there is. So I'll be discussing that. So I'm not going to be talking too much about the fossil record right now. And obviously, it was a global flood. It was all the fossils are not indicative of showing any change over time because they were all buried at the same time. So that's kind of obvious, It's an obvious takeaway there. Confirmation that mutations are prevented from accumulation in a population. Confirmation. Okay, you can accumulate as many mutations as you want. It's not going to change from what it was directed to be because it's always going to be a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, regardless of how many mutations or accumulations in the population there is. It's going to be a warped copy. It's going to be a bumped, deformed copy. It's going to be whatever, but it's going to be a copy. It's not going to be any other thing. Observations of organisms being created supernaturally or spontaneously. Well, you have to have a pre-existing written word to make any living organism. So every time you see a baby made by a pre-existing written word, you're looking at the result of the supernatural because there's no physical thing that can ever concatenate the written programming that orders you to be a human. I mean, this stuff is not complicated. I mean, if I can understand it, anybody can. And I'm from the Amazon. Not to say that's a bad thing, but I was raised I went to a private American school in the Amazon. They didn't have all the resources as kids have today, of course, because it was a long time ago, for one thing. But they gave me a halfway decent education so that I'm not an object credit giver. I don't give any of the credit to mindless matter. Of course, this video could drag out a while because there's a lot to discuss here. So, I don't know. see, because there's just so much to talk about. I mean, there's, yeah, I just kind of debunked that. Observations of organisms being created supernaturally. The the birth of a child is the result of a supernatural, in its origin anyway, pre-existing written word. So that is evidence of the supernatural right in front of you. When asked what hypothetical evidence could disprove evolution, replied, now this is the dumbest thing I ever heard. I'm going to be addressing it probably in my upcoming debate on Sunday. Fossil rabbits in the Precambrian era. This is got to be the dumbest thing that anybody has ever said. But anyways, I'll just leave it at that. You try to figure it out for yourself. And I'm thinking, I'm hearing people say that, and I'm saying, do they know what they're saying? It's like, I don't think they just repeat like parrots. It must be like parrots. Polly wants a cracker. Fossil rabbits in the Cambrian. Okay, numerous other potential ways to falsify evolution have also been proposed. For example, that humans have one fewer pair of chromosomes. That's kind of the number of chromosomes is totally irrelevant. What's relevant is what the information is. And I'm sure that everybody should know by now that the information in chimps is not the same as the information in humans. So it is not a copy from a common ancestor. Everybody should know that by now. If you don't, maybe you can learn something new today. Fusion hypothesis. Though telomeres, centromeres, totally irrelevant. Nothing to do with anything. What's relevant is because the reason why I say that, if you don't know already, the number of chromosomes is totally irrelevant. You got the same animal in different places, birds, foxes, or whatever. They got different numbers of chromosomes, but they're the same animal. It's totally irrelevant. It's got nothing to do with anything. Number of chromosomes. It's just they're trying to say, whatever they're trying to say. But the information is totally different. The Y chromosome in chimps is totally different, than humans. Look at this. 95, what's this? DNA analysis has shown, what a lie. This is what I'm talking about right here. DNA analysis has shown that humans and chimps share a large percentage of their DNA, between 95% to 99.4%, which is a lie because it was revised to 96%. You better change that, wiki knuckleheads. It's 96%, and that is only when you compare the comparable information. In other words, if the information is not comparable between chimps and humans, it's not counted in this comparison. They only compared DNA that's comparable. In other words, we got a protein that's such and such. Chimps have another comparable protein that is 96%, 95%, or whatever, similar to humans. That's what they're saying. That's the only thing that this thing here is saying. They're not being forthright. They're not being upfront. They're not being honest. Because the true comparison is not 95%. It's more like 80% or 75% or 70%. Similar to the actual information in the genome. So this is a flat out lie, which it is an example of how wrong evolution is and how misinformed people are because of the nonsense that they're being told. Of course, you know, if you only heard one side of the story, like in popular media, you're only going to know what they tell you. You know, if that's all you ever heard, that's all you're ever going to know. You know, it's like Ronald Reagan said, is that they know so much of what is not so. They know too much of what is not so. You know, it's the exact same story here. They know a lot of what is not so. So you can learn in your school what they tell you, but it doesn't mean you're going to know what the facts are. You're going to know what they tell you, and what they tell you is not what the facts are. Also, the evolution of chimpanzee, there is no evolution. And humans from common predicts geologically recent common ancestor. Geologically, what are you talking about? It's either ape or it's human. And humans are not apes because there's a difference. Numerous transitional fossils have since been found. What? Hence, human evolution has passed several fossil biology. No, you never found any transitional fossil. Like I just said, either it's an ape, monkey, ape, or it's a human. There is no common ancestor because we are copies of our ancestors, and the copies are not the same, which I just went over. So, many of Darwin's ideas and assertions of fact have been falsified as evolutionary science has developed, but these amendments, falsifications, have uniformly confirmed this central concept. This is supposed to be the problems with evolution, not you trying to prove evolution. Yeah, it's like they're holding on to 300-year-old belief, dead belief. And they're just making themselves look bad because they're making themselves out to be liars, making themselves not to understand science or anything. Okay, let's move on. Tautological nature. Okay. Related claim to the supposed unfalsifiability of evolution is that natural selection is tautological. Specifically, it is often argued that the phrase survival of the fittest is a tautology, and that the fittest is defined as the ability to survive and reproduce. Formula or assertion that is true in every possible interpretation. Okay. So in other words, it's the survival of those that survive. Yeah, it's brilliant science. Survival of those that survive. It's got nothing to do with the fittest or anything. Which those that survive are usually often deformed, actually, which totally, you know, makes it meaningless. Anyway, similarly, it's argued that evolutionary theory is circular reasoning. Yeah, quite circular. In that evidence is interpreted as supporting evolution, but evolution is required to interpret the evidence. An example of this is the claim that geological strata are dated through the fossils they hold, but that the fossils in turn are dated by the strata, which I'm not going to get into right now because I got an upcoming debate on it. But their position is relative to another strata, radiometric dating. Most strata were dated before the theory of evolution was formulated. Yeah, well, strata is what it is, It doesn't prove any part of evolution. It's flood sediments. But anyway, I guess I'll have to explain that when I have the debate. Objections to the evidence that evolution occurs tend to be more concrete and specific, involving direct analysis of evolutionary biology, biological methods, and claims. Let's make sure, hold on. No comments from the peanut gallery. So, by the way, did you ever wonder where the peanut gallery came from? It was the cheap seats up in the balcony. That was the peanut gallery. Whenever it's like a comedian or something, or some kind of art or whatever, the cheap seats were up in the balcony. So there's no comments from the peanut gallery. That's where that came from. Common claim of creation is that evolution has never been observed. Challenges often come down to debates over how evolution is defined. Okay. Yeah, you bait and switch your definition. Under the conventional biological definition of evolution, it is a simple matter to observe evolution occurring. Oh, in your prideful point of view. Evolutionary processes in the formation of population, changing their genetic composition from generation to, they don't change their genetic composition. They have some errors in duplication. When they duplicate, there are some errors that are sometimes corrected. Okay. And they don't change their genetic composition. It's still copying. It's either a copy or it's a copying error. And you can't get from here to there without the written instruction to do so. You can't get it from copying errors, from copying or copying errors. It's not going to happen. That's why you have to be skeptical of evolution, because you're copying instruction that is there. And the copying is very, very accurate. There are some errors. The errors are errors of information that's already there. It's not writing instruction that's not there. It's not that complicated to understand. Okay. Evolutionary processes in the form population changing their genetic composition. No, they don't change genetic composition. Not like that. They have their copies of copies of copies with some errors of what was already written there. Have been observed in different. No, they haven't been observed. Yeah. Fruit fly, mice, bacteria, they never change what they are. Why the need to jump to evolution, a natural cause, for different instruction to be different living organisms? You know, when the evidence is of having been concatenated by a more intelligent being. I mean, you can't use direction as evidence of no direction. Such studies on experimental evolution, I mean, why the need to be so biased? Why the need to be so irrational and illogical and want to jump to a physical cause, which there is no physical cause for getting instruction that's not there, particularly those microorganisms now provide important insight into how evolution does not exist, especially in the case of Antibiotic resistance is changing what's there. Response to such, and it doesn't change what it is. Response to such example, creationists say there are two major subdivisions of evolution to be considered, microevolution and macroevolution. There is no evolution of any kind. Variation is variation of the instruction that's already there. There's micro and macro. Macro evolution obviously doesn't occur, neither does microevolution occur. Because responding to the environment is not evolution. That's evident of intent. That's evident of a good design. Variation is not microevolution because it's shuffling the information that's already there. And genetic drift is not evolution because it's focusing more as a change of allele frequency, focusing more on some information rather than other information. It's not evolution. It's utilizing the instruction that's already there. There's no evolution happening. You can change it, you can alter it, you can warp it, you can do everything you want to it like they did the fruit flies, but it's never going to be anything other than a fruit fly. Why the need to jump to an object credit giving cause? This is questionable if macroevolution has been physically observed to occur. No, it hasn't. Most creationist organizations do not dispute the occurrence. I dispute it. For short-term evolution, such observed even dog breeding. Yeah, dog breeding. It gets old after a while. Dog breed will breed dogs. Dog breeding breeds dogs, rather than they should dispute occurrence of major evolutionary change over a long period of time, which by definition cannot directly be observed. And yes, that is a problem, is that you never did observe anything changing from one thing to another. The same way you never observed biogenesis either, which is the same problem as evolution, because abiogenesis has the problem of not being able to write instruction that's not there, which is the same problem that evolution has. It's not able to write instruction that's not there. Same problem, does not exist. It's biologist divine macro. Speciation is that's a nebulous term if I ever saw one. Speciation. What's a species? Oh, it's a new species. It changed color. It's a new species. What have been directly, additionally, anyway, ring species. Oh, that's a good one. Ring species. As if that's supposed to prove something. And what's that supposed to prove? Proves nothing. Still a lizard. Whatever. Just like I say, you can warp it, you can do anything you want to it. And of course, if you warp it enough, it's not going to be viable with another one that's not warped or warped in a different way. Additionally, past macroevolution can be inferred from historical traces, transitional fossils, Archaeopteryx, linking Brazil. Well, this is the thing. You got dinosaurs that are bird-like, and you got dinosaurs that are not bird-like. You got, non-avian dinosaurs. You got dinosaurs that are like birds and dinosaurs that are not like birds. So, what are you talking about? Everything is still different. Cat has the same basic structure as a dog, but it's a totally different animal. Linking fish, so the morphology is totally irrelevant. Creationist disputes, fossil hoaxes. Yeah, well, that's because every claim of evolution is always proved to be false. Anyway, Darwin himself found because there is no evolution. There never was any evolution. No evolution has ever been observed. It's never been verified. It's totally unscientific. It's totally biased, wishful thinking, and it's a false belief. Why then is not every geological formation, every stratum full of such intermediate links? Well, that's because they're all buried at the same time, okay? Darwin appealed to the limited collection available length of time involved. The fossils in the Silurian period. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I got to talk about it during the debate. Punctuated equilibrium, young Earth. Created kinds. Ken Ham, were you there? Created kinds and telling the story. Okay. Yeah, if you didn't notice, I'm reading Wikipedia. DNA sequencing of the genomes organisms allow independent tests of relationships divulged genetically phylogenetic trees. What? This is what I'm talking about. Just because it looks like something doesn't mean it is. It doesn't show anything within the tree of life. The tree of life is by a pre-existing written word that no physical thing can ever sequence or concatenate if you don't know what sequence is. The fields such as astrophysics, meteorology, where direct observation laboratory experiences are difficult and impossible. Scientists' method relies on observation and logical inference such as fields. In such fields, the test falsifiability is satisfied when theory predicted no result observation. Observation contradicted theory's prediction. Well, in astrophysics and such, you're observing things. You can't observe evolution. Relativity is not just a theory anymore. It's been verified. Both the dilation of time and the dilation of distance is now verified, in case you didn't know. So, if you want to argue that, you can argue that with me. A related objection is that evolution is based on unreliable evidence claim. Of course, all unreliable evidence. That's what I'm talking about. Unreliable. Improbability. Okay. It's improbable, so why do you jump to a natural cause if it's improbable? It is simply too unlikely for life in its complexity and parent design have arisen by chance. Okay, it's not about complexity. You can have complexity without order, without instruction. You can have complexity. Complexity doesn't mean order and instruction. They're two very different things. You know, when I get an example, the cake that I tried to make is complex. It doesn't mean it is ordered. You know. Let's see. It is argued that the odds of life having arisen without a deliberate intelligence got. I'm laughing at my own jokes. So astronomically low that it's unreasonable not to infer an intelligent designer from the natural world. Okay. Well, the problem is that all the different living organisms have the instructions of their own. They're all copies of their own common ancestor. And that's all the more evidence of having been directed, having been ordered, because not only is there one directed working mechanism to do one specific thing, there are many that do many different things. More extreme version, and we happen to need everything for all of us to exist. More extreme version of the argument, evolution cannot create complex structures. It's not about complexity, it's about direction, it's about intent and purpose. The idea that's simply too implausible for life to evolve wrongly, encapsulated with a quotation that the probability of life originating on Earth is no greater than the chance of a hurricane sweeping through a scrapyard, would have the luck of us to assemble a Boeing 747. Yeah, but it's even worse than that, because you're talking about billions of bits of programming for each living organism that is unique to what it is directed to be. So for each different living organism there is, which there are thousands and thousands of them, when you consider all the animals that were not on the ark, including the ones that were on the ark, talking thousands of individual, specifically created things that none of which can order themselves or be ordered by a physical cause, that's what naturalism is. It's a physical cause. Physical cause cannot make any directed working thing. If that were true, then we'd have directed working things all over the place. They would just spontaneously appear out of physical matter. Hoyle was a Darwinist, an atheist, and I don't care. Spermians, whatever. Yeah, you keep saying it, and you still believe in evolution, even though you have to appeal to a place other than the Earth in order to get life. And then you have to appeal to another universe and multiple universes and infinite universes, and you're not solving the problem, you're only proving an infinite potential, an infinite God. Thank you very much. Views, similarly, Hoyle's arguments. Teleological argument. An argument for the existence of God. Here. Teleological, physical teleological argument, also known as the argument from design or intelligent design argument, is an argument for the existence of God. It's not an argument for a natural cause, that's for sure, more generally than for an intelligent creator based on perceived evidence of deliberate design in the natural world. I mean, that's what your obvious conclusion should be. So why jump to the idea that physical things made and directed themselves? I'm still not where I want to be in this reading right here, which I saw an interesting thing to discuss. Argument by lack of imagination. That's evolution. Or too much imagination. Depends what you mean by imagination. If you're thinking of things that don't exist, then that's not a good thing. But if you're thinking of things that could possibly exist, then that's a good thing. And the only problem is that evolution is with nothing that could possibly exist. No part of evolution could possibly exist. Look at this, snowflakes. What's snowflakes got to do with biology? Snowflakes and crystals have nothing in common with biology. It's not a directed working thing. And the chemical, you should know that DNA is not determined by chemical composition or chemical properties. DNA is nucleotides, nitrogen bases that adhere to a sugar ribose backbone. It doesn't, the nitrogen bases don't touch each other, aren't determined by what each other are. They're determined only by the sequence that they were put into being, or the programming. So the programming that they have is not determined on their chemical structure. You should know that by now. No, there's no such thing as a an order that's induced by a chemical structure. That doesn't exist because the nitrogen bases, the ladder rungs on the DNA, adhere to a sugar backbone, which means that they don't adhere to each other. The nitrogen bases don't stick to each other, they stick to the sugar backbone, and they can be in any order or any sequence. It's not determined by their chemical structure, or any chemical structure for that matter, other than by way of copying information that was already there. It's also argued that there's insufficient evidence to make statements about plausibility and plausibility of biogenesis, that certain structures demonstrate poor design and plausibility of allowed. There's nothing about plausibility or implausibility. It's according to what the copy determines. Plantinga. Okay. Evolution cannot occur for the rise of reasonable faculties. Anyway. Okay, unexplained aspects of the natural world. Okay, these are things that result from creation. It's consciousness, hominid intelligence, instincts, emotion, metamorphosis, photosynthesis. Metamorphosis is an interesting topic because it's the same genome. It's the same genome that makes different things. It makes the animal to be different things. Photosynthesis, homosexuality, which I don't know what fake sex has to do with anything, but the music, language, religion, morality, altruism, and animals. But the main thing here would be consciousness, probably, intelligence. The fact that we are more than what our physical composition is, because we are more than the physical makeup of our what we are. We are what we are depending on what we believe, which makes us basically a God. And depending on what we believe, determines what we do. And as a God, we can be a good God or a bad God. So, yeah, depending on what we believe. It has nothing to do with anything other than that. Whether you believe the truth or whether you believe a lie. That's what determines every action there ever was. And sometimes, I don't know why people have a problem with that, but it happens to be a matter of fact. Creationists argue against evolution on the grounds it cannot explain certain non-voluntary processes such as abiogenesis, Big Bang, meaning of life. Evolution doesn't exist, so it's not going to explain anything. And the Big Bang is another subject. Big Bang is another topic that you should be skeptical of too. For one thing, how can everything fit in an infinitely small point? Or, at some point you have to think, maybe that's not possible, because even a black hole has different sizes. You're not fitting everything into a pinpoint. So, and there's no, in a black hole, mathematically, there is no time or distance there. So, and there's still different sizes of them, depending on how much matter is there. And the amount of matter they have determines the mass they have, which determines the amount of gravity, which is supposed to be infinite, the reach of gravity. Which means that time and space that we exist in is the result of the gravity of all the black holes around us, which should tell you something more about the black hole, or whether or not the black hole, the Big Bang, exists. It's argued that if one aspect of the universe is seemingly explicable, the entire body of scientific theories must be baseless. What? That's got nothing to do with it. There's a lot we can know, and a lot of so-called science has been disproved. At this point, objections leave the arena of biology, become general scientific or philosophical disputes. Yeah, it's a philosophy. But even Isaac Newton had a philosophy of science. He had a philosophy of science because he didn't want it to be absolute. He didn't want it to be absolute because obviously we don't know everything about the physical world, so we cannot be absolute about it. And because only God's word is absolute. And it's absolute, in case you're wondering, it's absolutely true that you were made to exist and that only your maker can be your hope. That's absolute. Nobody else can. Nothing else can. You can have hope in nothing else. The only hope that you have is in your maker. That's absolute. If you want to know what absolute is, it's the only thing that is absolute. At this point, okay, and it's not philosophy, it's a fact. Okay, here we go. Now we're talking. Because this is more my realm here of interest anyway, whether or not. Okay, again, it's not about complexity. It's not about complexity, but notice this is if you want to know, this is probably going to be the main thing on this live stream here that I want to talk about. I just want to point out some observations here. Okay. You notice here we know all about this, right? We know all about the flagellum and the stator and the C-ring and the P-ring and the L-ring and the hook. Anyway, if you don't, it doesn't matter anyway. But it's interesting. You have here, they're showing the mechanism, all the parts, but they're not showing the function. Now, why would Wikipedia do such a thing like that? Or whoever did this drawing here. So, what's missing from this picture? I already said it's the function. What else is missing? What causes the function? What causes the function? You would never know by looking at this picture. So, my main point here would be how they avoid the obvious implications here. The obvious implications are that there is a battery that runs an electric motor inside of you. I mean, whoever told you about a battery that runs an electric motor inside of you? It's an actual electric motor. It actually spins. And some guy I think some guy won the Nobel Prize for showing that it spins. And if it spins, it has a power source. And what is the power source? There's a battery, an electric current. But no, they can't say it. They can't tell you like that. They say it's a uneven gradient of ions. It's an uneven, and you have proton pumps that pump. Instead of saying they got generators that generate electricity, you got a proton pump that pumps ions so that there's an uneven gradient. Yeah, there's an uneven gradient. Well, what do you think electric current is? What do you think a battery is? What do you think electric motor is? Anyway, it's just one of my pet peeves. So take it for what it's worth. You see this picture here, all these parts, they're trying to argue against complexity, irreducible complexity, whether or not any part of it can exist without the other parts and all that stuff, which, you can't use directed working things as evidence of no direction. And you can't show a directed working things without showing how it works, which is what they're doing. They're showing a directed working thing without showing how it works or what it is. It works by positive electric current. And that's how it works. But they don't want you to think in terms of a battery that stores positive ions because the electricity that we uses electrons, not positive ions. Because the wires that we uses electrons. We use electrons because it's easy for us to use the flow of electrons to power electric motors. But in this case, it's not the negative electron, it's the positive ion, which is still electric current. Because instead of a flow of electric negative electrons is a flow of positive ions. But anyway, so, and it spins very fast, and it makes ATP very fast, which is the energy. What do you think you run on? You think you run on magic? You run on these electric motors, trillions of electric motors inside of you. Trillions and trillions and trillions of them. That's how where you get your energy from, is from these electric motors. It's all chemical, electrical, and chemical is electrical, by the way. So you can't deny that this is not an electric motor, because chemical is electrical to begin with, and all the functions, the directed working functions inside of us, are chemical and electrical, and chemical is electrical. So there. So that's that. Okay. Enough of that. That's basically the main point what I wanted to make. That instead of seeing things for what they are, people like to look the other way for some reason. Okay, genetic drift. We know about genetic drift. It never changes anything. Oh, the evolution of the eye. This is supposed to be the main evidence of evolution. And instead of seeing how impossible it is to have an eye, they're trying to say, oh, we take the most difficult thing to make and say, oh, it forms naturally. And as if written instruction is gleaned from thin air. Many researchers have found the evolution of an eye attractive study because the eye distinctly exemplifies an analogous organ found in many animal forms. Simple light detection is found in bacteria, single-celled organisms, plants, and animals. Complex. Okay, but what they're trying to say here is that there are natural explanations for how the eye developed. They're trying to say that first there was light sensitive cells that were more light sensitive, and then they developed into this and that and the other thing. The problem with that is that all the different eyes are very different. The compound eye is very different from our eye. The octopus eye is different from our eye. And they want to say that, oh, that's all by evolution. No, it's not by evolution. It's by direction. It's by instruction. There's no other way than by instruction. It's by copying what was already there. Copies of what was already there, and you can't get a copy of what was not there, which is the prediction of creation, or what we can surmise from creation. Who's Richard Dawkins? Professor evolution, ethnologist. What's this? Oh, animal behavior, usually focused behavior, conditions, behavior, traits, behaviorism. Okay, so he observed animal behavior. Richard Dawkins says the topic of evolution of the feather. Evolution doesn't exist. Doesn't exist, so there's no evolution of a feather. And a feather requires instruction. You need instruction, and not the same instruction as it takes to make a scale. I don't care what anybody says. It's not the same instruction. You can see the instruction for the different feathers is not even the same instruction, much less for a scale. Okay. Biochemist Michael Behe argued immune system, blood clotting. Yeah, there's so many systems. Come to think of it, there's so many different systems. You're not just one system. You're a whole bunch of systems. Not just one system. Behe, 1996, claimed that bacterial flagellum was irreducibly complex. That was 1996. So required deliberate, intelligent design. The flip side of this claim is that the flagellum can't be produced by natural selection acting on random mutation or any other intelligent process. To falsify claim, a scientist could go to the laboratory and place a bacterial species lacking a flagellum under some selective pressure for mobility, say, grow it for 10,000 generations and see if a flagellum or any equally complex system was produced. If that happened, my claims would be disproven. New developments and advances in biology has improved understanding of the imagination of how the flagella, the electric motor, the battery and the electric motor, how they made themselves according to the fantasy belief of evolution, have already undermined arguments. Yeah, how? The idea, it undermined it. Oh, how? Complex system refuted the expectations of the scaffolding and, right. So, everything is by instruction. If you don't have the instruction, you don't have the mechanism. Everything is by instruction. Get that into your head. There is nothing in a living organism that is not by a pre-existing written word, instruction that was already there. And everything is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And you can't copy instruction that's not there. So nothing has instruction to be anything other than what it was ordered to be. That is the final case. That's the final conclusion that any sane person can have. You cannot get written instruction that's not there. There's no reason for you to think that there should be another way to get written instruction that's not there, because there is no other way. It has to be in the time of creation, in creation. The Cambrian explosion was a relatively rapid appearance. Look at this number. 542 million years ago. Most major animal phyla as demonstrated in the fossil record. Many more phyla now extinct. This was accompanied by major diversification of other organisms prior to the Cambrian explosion. Individual cells occasionally organized into colonies over the following. Okay. So what if individual cells organized into colonies? So what? Doesn't mean they organized themselves into a hamster. Did they reproduce? Did they find another colony, a female colony of organized individual cells? No. It's all baseless imagination. It's fantasy. It's fantasy. They talk about pink unicorns and flying spaghetti monsters because they believe fantasy. They're projecting their own, you know, magical belief onto us. But the difference is that we believe in Creator. They believe that matter made itself and made you, or your mother and father. So the difference is that they worship the creature rather than the Creator. That's the whole point of biblical teaching that is so derided by so-called atheists who like to make fun of the goat herders who understood more than they understand. They try to make fun of them because they don't look so hot themselves. So, creation of information. Basically, I've been talking the whole time about. Oh, thermodynamics. This is the one I got. Thermodynamics is that energy dissipates. Basically, energy dissipates. Okay? And whenever you have something that takes advantage of the dissipation of energy, that is usually an indication of intelligence, intent, and purpose. For example, you can't get a clipper ship that makes itself from junk swirling around in the middle of the ocean. The clipper ship that will go back and forth and actually make progress into a headwind, against a headwind. In other words, it can travel the opposite direction that the wind is blowing. Something like that is taking advantage of the flow of energy to actually move contrary to the flow of energy. That takes intelligence. That takes mathematical precision. You know, it's not something that makes itself. So, you know, and everything is running down anyway. That's another point. Everything's just running down. Everything's going from order to disorder, including biology. Because every time you make a copy, you make mistakes, and the more mistakes you make, the worse off the copy is going to be, and the less it's going to work. The the good thing about, or I don't want to say the luck that we have, but the interesting aspect is that our design or our information, our instruction that makes us what we are is over 6,000 years old. Our technology, you might say, well, technology is from an infinite creator, but the actual technology is in use, has been in use for 6,000 years now, and it's not obsolete yet. Still working, in other words, still functional after 6,000 years or more than 6,000 years. And it is a programmed, digitally programmed system. Not only us, but every other living organism is a digitally programmed working mechanism, a directed working mechanism. And we're repaired by our DNA. The DNA repairs itself, and as such, it's been viable for more than 6,000 years. And of course, that is indicative of intent and purpose. And with thermodynamics, everything is running down, which it is. It still happens to be viable, and only our maker can remake us, nobody else can. So, and our maker is not any physical thing. The claim that your maker is a physical thing is to be irrational, illogical, and wrong. And that's what evolution is. It's claiming a natural cause, so it's irrational, illogical, and wrong. Because evolution can't write instruction that is not there, because evolution doesn't exist for one thing, but errors in making copies can't write instruction that's not there, even if it's selected for. Survival of those that survive. Survival of those that survive. Yeah. The best I can do is preserve the integrity of the written instruction that was already there. It can't do anything more. It can do less. The fact that natural forces routinely lead to local decrease in entropy, water freezes, that's got nothing to do with anything. Fertilized eggs turn into babies. You can't use design as evidence of no design. Plants use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide, water into sugar and oxygen. Yeah, by way of design, by way of instruction, they do that. That's what I'm saying. You can't get a clipper ship coming out of a swirling pile of junk in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, come sailing out, going back and forth against the wind. You need instruction for that. And because of the fact that everything falls apart at a much greater rate than it supposedly puts itself into directed working order. It never puts itself into directed working order, and even if it did, the rate that it falls apart is much greater, much faster than any supposed rate of putting itself into directed working order, because we know it falls apart. We know everything decays, even information and DNA decays, because of the errors in copying. So at some point, it's not going to be viable anymore. It's still good, and it can be corrected. Of course, the errors can be corrected by intent and purpose, design. And since we were made with intent and purpose, we might be able to do some of that, but not everything. Of course, if we want a moral of the story here, is that the physical things are totally irrelevant to everything. The only thing that's important is doing what's right, and people don't do what's right. That's the only problem. The problem is not anything other than whether or not people do what's right or tell the truth or not. That's why you have the problem with evolution and atheism, because people are not telling the truth. People are not doing what's right. People are not telling the truth, and it's by their intent. It's because they want to not do what's right, and they want to confuse the issues, and they want to mess, everything up. It's easy to mess things up. It's harder to put things into order. People work for years and years and years teaching their kids to do the right thing for years and years, and then people come along and destroy it. It's easy to destroy. It's harder to put it, things like they should be, or even understand how things should be. Okay, social effects. If you think you're an animal, you're going to act like an animal, right? Yeah. We already know about that. Communism, socialism, Pol Pot. Okay, let's see. Found that religious belief, including belief in creation, disbelief in evolution, are positively correlated with social ills like crimes. Okay, not if you do the right thing. If you do the right thing, you're not going to be a criminal. If you obey Christian teaching, if you follow Christian teaching, you're not going to be a criminal. It's as simple as that. That's the whole point, because atheism and evolutionism doesn't have a teaching to do what's right. They don't even have that concept of that. Social Darwinism, Christian missionaries rarely adopt any customs, language, people under their empires. What are you talking about? Atheism. Atheism is a good topic only just to refute it as being absolutely nothing whatsoever. Because atheism can't tell you what is, and when it tries to say what is not, it fails because it tries to say there's no gods. I am a god, you are a god, so atheism fails at saying there's no gods. End of story. Atheism is useless. Totally and utterly useless. It's worthless. It's not good. It's not even worth the time to print it on a piece of paper. And look at this. That's it. That's it for the problems of evolution. Anyway, whatever. I guess I finished. Wasn't too long. Okay. Well, anyways, guess you get the idea that biology is what it's directed to be. It can only do what it's ordered to do. And we were made in the image of our Maker so that we are gods who are put in charge of this world. Look at this. You got objections to evolution, then it goes through and explains what evolution is all about, evolution and evolution and evolution and evolution, and it doesn't even exist. And accepted by who? Accepted by object credit givers? Object credit givers are not scientists, so scientists don't accept it. Evolution is nonsense. Show me science. Bring me a scientist. Bring me a scientist that believes in evolution, and we'll have a talk. They're not scientists. They don't know evolution exists. Science is what you can know, and you can't know evolution exists because it never did. Because we have a thing called the global flood that buried your evolution in a matter of months. So your belief in evolution is just a fantasy to begin with. Total nonsense. It's not scientific. It's total nonsense. Nothing scientific whatsoever about evolution. You cannot get written instruction that's not there by making copies of what is there. The best you can get is multiple copies with mistakes of what was already there, which is not going to write instruction that is not there. End of story. Only your maker can remake you. Nobody else can. Hey, Wildheart, what are you doing? How you doing? I just spent, let me see, an hour and 40 minutes trying to talk about evolution. Or I was going through a Wikipedia page, actually. This Wikipedia page on the objections for evolution, because I want people to be more skeptical of a natural cause. Because a natural cause is an object credit giving cause which has no basis in science. Why the jump to give credit to a natural cause when there is no such thing as a natural cause? Even, nature can't make itself, it can't make anything else. It only is what it's made to be, and it only does what it's directed to do. So much for that. Let me see. What did I say? I didn't even read your comment. Are you going through every topic in the description? Hold on. Yeah, I was just going through the objections to evolution. Some of the objections. I didn't want to miss anything, so I went to Wikipedia so I could get a list of all the objections to evolution. Because I want people to be more critical, more skeptical of a natural cause for everything we see. Because, of course, no physical thing can explain its own existence, and much less the existence of every directed thing in nature, because it doesn't direct anything. Okay. Did I look at a wiki page for evolution too, or just one against it? It was a wiki page. It was an evolutionist wiki page on the objections of evolution. So every time it mentioned or listed a problem with evolution, it tried to give a solution to evolution, which is total nonsense, of course, because evolution is total nonsense and unscientific. So, yeah, I'm glad to see you here, Wild Heart, but I might be a little bit tired, but tired of talking. So I might just end the discussion if you don't have too many pressing, urgent questions. But yeah, I just want people to be more skeptical when it comes to evolution, and because why the need to jump to give all the glory to mindless matter? I don't get it. Doesn't make sense to me. When the evidence is showing direction, intent, and purpose, and the person jumps to say, "Oh, that proves that there was no direction, intent, or purpose," it doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, it's just that I don't know. I've been talking for a while, and I just need a break, I guess. Yeah, great to see you, Wildheart. I'll see you sometime soon. So with that, always look to the truth. Always look to what's rational and reasonable, because Christian teaching is teaching of what is true. Only your maker can cover for you himself and remake you again from the inside out by the power of his true word as no one else can.